Hi, friend. I'm Steph, and thank you for joining me for another episode of From the Depths. In today's episode, I want to guide you into a deeper understanding of how the subconscious mind is formed and how it's impacting your life so that you can start allowing your subconscious to work for you rather than against you. So let's dig in. As famous psychologist Carl Jung states, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So, what really is going on when it comes to your subconscious mind? Now, we could get super technical and go into psychological textbook type analysis, but I want to explore this in a way that's a little more intuitive and makes it just easier to grasp what really is going on with our subconscious. So, for the most part, we're probably all familiar with the analogy of the iceberg, where the part of the iceberg that's above water, that's visible, is quite small in comparison to the massive amount of ice lying underneath the water. The iceberg really represents the difference between our cognitively accessible mind and our subconscious, or the ingrained, innate belief systems, self-concept, and automatic behaviors that have been programmed into us from a very young age. If you've seen the movie Inside Out, then you know all about how the mind works. We have two memory centers in our brain, short-term memory and long-term memory.
Let's get those memories down to long-term.
Short-term memory is all the stuff that we have going on right now, all the things that our senses are perceiving and active thoughts that we're able to hold within our active mind. Since the brain is incredibly advanced biological technology, it has so many mechanisms at play to help it function at its peak level. So the brain is really efficient with its use of energy. Since our brains are always on energy saving mode, it doesn't send everything that we're perceiving in the moment or everything we're thinking into long-term memory.
That's long-term memory.
Long-term memory?
So there's two ways to send a memory from short-term to long-term. The first one is through an emotional tie. This is the reason why everyone always remembers where they were, what they were doing when the Twin Towers were hit. It was a collectively traumatic event. So as a collective, our minds automatically moved that into our long-term memory. This is why special occasions, the birth of your children, your wedding day, graduations, milestone moments are always much more impactful because there's an emotional tie to those moments. And we tend to be able to remember more details from those days than, say, any other like random Tuesday. So our emotions tied to our experiences cause those memories to be transferred into our long-term storage. The second way is by strengthening neural pathways through repetition. So I'm sure you've had this experience where you've been driving home from work and you think to yourself, I need to stop at the grocery store on my way home from work. And you're thinking about the grocery store, thinking about through the list in your mind, and then you're driving and suddenly something catches your eye and distracts you for a second. And suddenly you're at home and you're thinking to yourself, dang it, I meant to go to the grocery store. This is how your subconscious mind is running. It is doing the least amount of activity possible to get you where you need to go and do what you need to do in order to preserve energy. So it started with learning how to drive a car. At first, that was really daunting, and you have to worry about all these mirrors and making sure you're using your turn signal properly. And how do I push on the gas without, jarring everybody, and et cetera, et cetera. And now you just drive. You don't even have to think about any of those things because it's become an autopilot activity. Just like driving home from work, it's something you do with enough repetition that it has caused it to become deeply ingrained in your brain. And you could probably move away for a few years and then come back to the same town and still be able to get from work to your old house without even thinking. In fact, this is exactly why Kevin McAllister was left home alone.
We slept in!
Kate and Peter McAllister were in such a rush that morning to gather everything up and get to the airport on time that they were operating them completely on autopilot. Since Kevin doesn't normally sleep in the attic, they didn't even think to look up there because they weren't thinking. They were acting out on autopilot. Their brains were trying to preserve as much energy as possible so that they could focus on getting all their stuff together quickly and getting to the airport on time. So leaving Kevin at home in the attic was completely inevitable.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
So let's take that one step further. Now imagine the way that you've learned your native language. I'm just going to use the example of English because that's my native language and it just makes it easier to talk about it. So you grew up learning English, and how did you go about learning that language? For the most part, you learned it through immersion of experience and just having those words repeated over and over and over. Eventually, you did go to school to refine your knowledge of language and learn more about grammatical structure and spelling and all of that. But you wouldn't even have to go to school at all in order to become fluent in English. If you take any baby from anywhere in the world and put them in a home that speaks English, that's going to be their native language, regardless of genetic or anything they would have inherited through their family line. Now, if you're an English speaker, just imagine for a second what it would be like to hear somebody speaking English and not immediately know what they were saying. You probably couldn't do this. You would immediately know what they were talking about. You would immediately understand their words. Maybe, you might understand it in your own definition of things, and semantics might be at play, but you would be able to understand what they're saying. Now, imagine trying to not understand English. Now, this is what we do when we try to reprogram our subconscious. We tell ourselves, oh, I'm just not going to do that. I'm just going to change. I'm just going to stop smoking. I'm just going to stop eating when I'm feeling emotional. I'm just going to stop spending so much money. I'm just going to stop doing XYZ behavior. I'm just going to stop thinking all those negative thoughts. Or alternatively, I'm going to start exercising. I'm going to start loving myself more. I'm going to start being more positive. Now, these are all great ambitions to have, and the mind, when focused, can accomplish that. However, about 95%, if not more, of our human behavior is coming from the subconscious. It's nearly impossible to deprogram something that is that deeply ingrained into us as the English language. If we want to start speaking a new language, we don't try to stop understanding our native language. What we do is we turn all our attention onto the new language that we want to learn, and we start learning it. We start immersing ourselves in it. And what's the best way to learn a new language? To move to that country or be in an environment where that's the language they speak, and you're just immersed in it. It's causing those neural pathways to form and strengthen enough that you can learn how to be fluent in another language, or 5, 6 languages. There's plenty of people that are fluent in multiple languages, and it's not because they tried to deprogram their original language. It's because they started to focus on building new neural pathways. Okay, so why is it so important to think of it like this? Well, what we need to do is stop focusing all of our attention on the things we don't want and start turning our attention towards what we do want and what we want to build in our life. Now, this is just an example using the English language, but this is how we have learned all of our deeply ingrained belief systems. So our belief systems around money. If you grew up being told that money is the root of all evil, or money doesn't grow on trees, or there's just not enough money. If you grew up with those phrases being said over and over and over again, that is going to be part of your subconscious mind. Other things would be our relationship to food and how we process through our emotions, how we view exercise and physical fitness, our relationship to relationship and love, and our attachment style, whether we're anxiously attached, securely attached, or avoidant. All of these things and more have been so deeply programmed into us that it is impossible to go in and undo what has been programmed. All we can do is start to build new neural pathways. But there's a problem, and that is, how do we know what's in our subconscious mind if it's subconscious? If we're not able to see what's underneath the water of an iceberg, how can we see what's underneath the water of our own mind? And one thing to keep in mind with this is going to be a long-term process. Just like learning a new language, it's going to take time. It's not an overnight thing. You can't just read a book in French and suddenly know how to speak French. You probably would look at it and not even know what that word, how to pronounce it. So we've got to start with the basics, and we've got to start building from that and creating those new neural pathways. So how do we discover what's down there? Well, one analogy that I think is super helpful is a tooth cavity. If you have a cavity and you go to the dentist for it, they have to drill and get all of the decayed parts of the tooth removed before they put in a filling. Now, I just told you that we can't go in and undo what's already been done, but what we can do is start to become aware. And so our awareness of it is going to be the removal of the decay. Until we get all of that decay out of the tooth, we don't want to put a filling in there, because the tooth decay would continue to rot away underneath the filling and cause further problems and complications. In this example, the filling would be like using affirmations like, I am amazing. I am perfect in every way. If we start doing that kind of thing while we still have decay going on under the surface, that decay will continue to rot, except now we can't even see it. We're so focused on, oh, I've got that filling in place. I'm good. It's going to continue to cause problems in our life, but then we won't be seeking treatment for it because we'll think that it's already taken care of. Rather than starting with just a bunch of affirmations and positivity, not that there's anything wrong with positivity and affirmations, but they can actually do more harm than good if they're not used at the correct time. And this is where the phrase toxic positivity comes in, because we can sense the falseness of it when it's not authentic and it's not resonating deeply within. And the subconscious always knows. The subconscious mind is highly intelligent. You can't trick your subconscious. So it's going to take time, and we've just got to be patient with this process. This whole life we're living, this is a journey of self-realization and exploration, and there's no rush. There's no rush to your healing. There's no rush to becoming this fantasy level perfect being. First of all, that doesn't even exist. There is not a single human being on this planet who is completely perfect and infallible. So I just want you to keep that in mind whenever you set out to make a change in your life, improve your life in some way, or just become the version of yourself that you're really wanting to become. It's an ongoing process. It's something we need to give ourselves a ton of grace for and allow it to take time. Just allow it to take time. If you can accept that and be willing for it to take time and do the deep work that is required in the creation of these new neural pathways and this new language you're going to speak, it's going to be a much smoother process for you. Okay, so before we go for today, I want to leave you with one more note. I want you to start looking at life as your ultimate guru. Things that come up into your life are going to highlight what's happening in your subconscious. What do I mean by this? Let's use our driving home analogy. You're driving home and you think to yourself, I need to stop at the grocery store on my way home from work. And then all of a sudden you find yourself at home and not at the grocery store. In this instant, you know that your subconscious mind has just done something for you on your behalf to preserve energy, which is actually, this is actually a really good and useful system. This is, like I said, incredibly advanced biological technology. And so we want to appreciate that technology because it means we can work with it. Now we know we can really work with this. And this is where it gets exciting, you guys. You get home and you realize, oh shoot, I meant to go to the grocery store. Oh, that was my subconscious working for me. And now you can be aware of it. It's just like addressing a little bit of that decay. And now next time, you're going to focus your attention a little bit more on holding in your short-term memory the thought, I'm going to the grocery store. I need to go to the grocery store. And the more we can start to allow those instances in our life to come up and realize, oh, that was just my subconscious mind working in my favor to help me preserve energy. And we'll go a little bit more into this down the road, but I want to try to keep this as easy to understand as possible for now. So we just want to start by becoming aware that that happened. Like, oh, I meant to go to the grocery store and I came home instead. Ah, I see. That was my subconscious. Okay, now next time I'm going to focus my attention a little bit harder. That first step of awareness is crucial because if we don't stop and think and have that reflection that, oh, I did this when I meant to do this, then we're never going to successfully create a new pathway there because we continue to have it just live in our subconscious. So we haven't brought it up to the surface yet. So I want you to think of these instances, and I'm stealing this metaphor from Aaron Abke, the metaphor of whack-a-mole. We don't go and hit all the moles that are still lying under their little holes. We only try to hit the ones as they come up. So we're going to start just using our conscious mind to become more aware of when our subconscious is at play. And then we'll start to figure out what areas we want to focus on and build those new neural connections. But for now, just start becoming aware of this in a very simple way, like the car analogy. If start letting life be your ultimate guide and teacher to show you where things are maybe a little bit off, not quite working in your favor. The mind is, of course, working hard to preserve energy and help you function at your peak level. But if we have programming that has been downloaded, if we have a language, so to speak, that we don't prefer, that is running in our subconscious, then it's up to us to figure out what that is and start to reprogram it. If there's a subconscious ingrained belief that we aren't deserving of success or we aren't deserving of abundance, then we can start noticing how that might be playing out in ways like not being able to make higher sales or not being able to get to that next level, book clients at that higher price point, because there's a subconscious belief going on inside that says money is the root of all evil. And your subconscious is going to preserve the most amount of energy to keep you from having to exert and grow beyond what it believes. Your subconscious will always be working to prove itself right. So let's just start by becoming aware of the things that are running our lives on autopilot. And eventually we can start programming those new languages and those new neural pathways. Doing this will help shift our trajectory and put you on the path towards success. Now, there is so much more I want to share with you guys about this topic, so stay tuned in for the next episode. We're going to continue exploring these ideas and how to reprogram your subconscious mind for success and fulfillment. So that's it for today. If you got anything out of this episode, please leave me a comment down below with what resonated for you. And if you have a friend who you think would find some value from this as well, go ahead and share this with them. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.